Hello everyone, welcome back to Cook Create Read. My name is Terry and it's been a while since I uploaded a video. I knew that would happen. I said in my BookTube newbie video that consistency would be my major problem. And yeah, I knew that would be the case. But today I thought I would talk to you about all the books I've read so far this year. It's April, so all the books I've read in the first quarter of the year. I've read 14 books, which isn't a huge amount. I know some people read that many books in a month or more even. But for me, that's pretty good going. And so I will talk you through them. The first book I read this year was A Particularly Nasty Case by Adam Kay. Adam Kay was a doctor in the NHS who gave up being a doctor and became an author. He wrote a memoir called This Is Going to Hurt, I think, which I enjoyed, was very good. And Natasha bought me this for Christmas, my daughter. She bought me this, no, she bought it for my birthday actually. And so I made it my first read of the year. And I enjoyed this. It wasn't the best book I've ever read. I found that the humour aspect was a bit too try hard. He was trying too hard to be funny, and I'm not a big fan of funny books, which makes me sound like an absolute misery, but I like to laugh. I've got a good sense of humour, I think, but for some reason I just don't really like funny books. So this follows the story of a doctor at a kind of struggling hospital in London, and one of the doctors? Yeah, one of the a consultant in the hospital dies of a heart attack, and the narrator, or the main character of the story, thinks that it's suspicious, and the story goes from there. And we follow this little group of hospital staff who try and figure out what happened. The main narrator in the story has mental health issues, and he's just come back to work from a period of being off work because of his mental health. So he's worried about what people will think about him. I work in a hospital, and although I could identify with some of the characters in this book, I really hope that most of the characters in this book are not reflective of the NHS, because that would be very worrying. But it's a good book. I recommend it if you enjoy hospital dramas, if you like watching Casualty or ER, God, that's so old, Grey's Anatomy or anything like that. There's nothing like graphically medical or anything in the book. It's more of a mystery thriller crime story. But yeah, I recommend. I think I gave it 3.5 stars, and a pretty good start to the year. The next book I read was The Mushroom Tapes by Helen Garner, Chloe Hooper and Sarah Krasnostein. Conversations on a Triple Murder Trial. So this is a story set in Australia. It's a true crime book, and it follows the story of this woman who poisoned her in-laws and her husband. Was it her husband as well? I can't remember if it's her husband as well. I love listening to, or I used to love listening to true crime podcasts. I remember when the Serial podcast first came out, which was absolutely amazing. I loved it. And this is kind of a written version of a true crime podcast, but it just didn't quite work for me. I think, so the three authors, they're like traveling in a car and going to watch the trial and everything, and they've tried to make it really conversational and like informal, and they actually state in the book that they didn't want it to be gossipy and salacious in any way. But I actually think that it turned, for me, I found it was quite gossipy and it was quite salacious, and it just didn't really go deep enough into why this woman committed these murders. And it was conversational, but it just was a bit too surface level for me, and it didn't go deep enough. And I just found that their conversations were too gossipy, which is exactly what they were trying to avoid. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. I finished it, read it really quickly. It's quite a short book. And I would recommend it if it sounds good, like if you like true crime and podcast type things, then I would recommend it. But it wasn't one of my favourites, and I was a bit disappointed. The next book I read was Show Me Where It Hurts by Claire Gleason. This book was heart-wrenching. Just a really sad story about a husband and wife and their 2 children, I think. They got 2 children. Yeah, 2 children. And this isn't a spoiler at all. One day the husband, they're driving home, I think, from visiting his family, and he purposefully drives the car off the road to try and kill himself, his 2 children and his wife. It's just absolutely horrendous. The like the study of grief and guilt, and like she loved her husband and doesn't understand why he did this. And yeah, saying you enjoyed this book isn't really, enjoyed isn't the right word. It's quite depressing. It's a really close look at mental health and how men deal with mental health, particularly mental health issues. I do think you need to be in the right frame of mind to read this book. I know like a couple of years ago I wouldn't have been able to read this, but if you are in the right frame of mind and if you're in the market for this type of book, highly recommend it. I gave it 4 stars and would definitely read anything else by this author. I don't know if she's written anything else. She's written short stories, so I might actually seek them out because I really liked her writing. The next book I read was on my Kindle, Don't Let Him In by Lisa Jewell. I love Lisa Jewell's books. I've read quite a few of her books, and this was no exception. I really did enjoy it. It follows the story of a man who is... Oh, is that a spoiler? So I don't want to give too much away about this book, but... So for me, this book actually hit very close to home. The man in this book very much reminded me of a member of my family, which I don't really want to talk about, but I found like the book was quite painful for me to read, actually. And in some ways I wish I hadn't read it. But if I would, you know, if you don't have that kind of close relationship with somebody like this, then I think you will absolutely love this book. And I don't really know what else I can say about this one. It's I just found it too close to home for me to enjoy fully. Or kind of wish I hadn't read it, but that's not because of the writing or the story or anything. It's a brilliant story, really well written, just not my vibe. Next up, I read Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I joined Jess Decker Reads on Instagram, started a buddy read for this. There were like 5 or 6 people in the buddy read, and I read this with them, and that was a lot of fun. I thought I'd read this book when I was, 17, 18, but I don't actually think I have read it before because none of it was familiar really, and I am completely and utterly bamboozled as to why people think this is a romance novel. It's not. This is like a hate novel, really. I just don't understand it. There's nothing romantic about this book at all. It's toxic masculinity at its finest. The people in this book, the men and the women, are all hideous people. They're horrible to each other. There isn't a single character in here that I kind of was rooting for and, wanted to do well. It's just a misery novel, really. I gave it 3 stars. Like, it's Emily Bronte. She can write a book. But definitely not a romance. It even says on the back here, Wuthering Heights is commonly thought of as romantic, but try rereading it without being astonished by the extremes of physical and psychological violence. Absolutely, it's just, I completely agree with that. Who said that? Jeanette Winterson. She knows what she's talking about. Yeah, just what have I marked here? I've got one page. Why have I marked this? Oh, nothing. Yeah, so, I mean, what else can I say? Wuthering Heights, not a romance. I haven't seen the film that's just come out, and I was planning to. While I was reading the book, I was thinking, yeah, it came out just after I finished reading the book. So I was planning to watch the film, but I don't think I will. And I don't really want to spend any more time with these people, to be honest. Next up, I read The Night Stalker by Chris Carter. This is, I think, what book is this in their series? This is book 3 in this series. What's it called? The Robert Hunter series. Another great serial killer thriller. Love these books. They're just a great escape and a palate cleanser, if you will, after the hideousness that was Wuthering Heights. And another great story, fast-paced thriller. Love Robert Hunter. Love his sidekick Garcia, and can't wait to read the next one. The next book I read was also on my Kindle, Cursed Daughters by Oyinkan Braithwaite. I really loved My Sister the Serial Killer. I thought that was an excellent book. I think I gave it 5 stars when I read it. This one didn't quite live up to my expectations. I'm not a huge fan of folklore within storylines. I don't know why. I just find that it kind of pulls me out of the story, and there is quite a bit of folklore in this book. Having said that, I did like the sisterhood aspect, like getting to know all the different sisters. There were a lot of characters in the book. And it was a bit repetitive as well. I read it quite a while ago, so I'm trying to remember it. There was a bit of a mystery element, which wasn't really a huge mystery element. I did give it 4 stars, so I must have enjoyed it quite a lot. I think what just pulled it down was the too much folklore aspect for me and quite repetitive. It is completely different from My Sister the Serial Killer, and I think I was kind of expecting something a bit more thriller-esque, which this wasn't, but still a good read. I think if you're into folklore and kind of, not mystical, yeah, mystical I guess, elements, then you will really like this one. The next book I read was The Names by Florence Knapp. Oh, this one is another heart-wrenching book. This follows the story of a boy, really, who is born to a family, and it's kind of a sliding doors story where we follow him from 3 different points of view. One, he gets named by his father, one he's named by his sister, and one he's named by his mother, and how his name affects him and affects his life and how he grows up and what a name means to you. This is like big on the domestic violence, so if that is something that you find difficult to read, I would avoid this book. I think this book was so cleverly written, and it sounds like it would be 3 completely separate stories, but somehow it all pulls together and into like a really cohesive storyline, and I really loved it. Again, I don't know if she has written anything else. She's previously written a non-fiction book about quilt making, and this is her debut novel, but I'll definitely be looking out for more books by her. I thought this was absolutely brilliant and I loved it, but again, be warned, lots of violence in here, which parts of it are really hard to read. The next one I read was We All Want Impossible Things by Catherine Newman. I read Sandwich by her last year and really absolutely loved that book. So I picked this one up and I thoroughly enjoyed this one as well. So this follows the story of 2 friends who've been friends for like many years, since school, I think. Yeah, they've been friends for over 40 years. And one of them has cancer and is dying, and the other one is kind of taking care of her and dealing with the grief and all the trauma that entails. I found this to be really emotional and heartwarming and hopeful. It's quite funny, and I love the friendship aspect of this book. I did read some reviews where the people felt that oh God, who's the one? So Edie is diagnosed with cancer and Ash is the friend. And in her, I think, in her grief and in trying to cope with everything that's going on, Ash acts in some ways that people seem to think were irrational or selfish or, like, you know, unacceptable. But I felt like that was her trying to deal with the grief and trauma of losing her best friend of 40 years. And I think, you know, everybody acts in different ways and reacts in different ways to that kind of situation. And I think the way she reacted was completely believable. And, you know, who knows what I would do in that situation? I really don't know. I don't think I would react like Ash does, but I can understand why she reacted the way she did. And I just thought this was a brilliant book. I definitely want to read. I've actually picked up another one of hers. I think it's called Wreck, her newest book, which I haven't read yet. But she's fast becoming one of my favourite authors. And yeah, loved it. Next up, I read Blue Sisters by Coco Mellows. I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein a couple of years ago, and I didn't really enjoy that one. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think I gave it 3 stars. So I'd been putting off reading this one for a long time. But actually, I really enjoyed this one a lot more than I did Cleopatra and Frankenstein. This follows the story of, I think it's 4 sisters. Is it 4 of them? I don't know, maybe. 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah. 4 sisters who each follow a different track in life, and one of them dies. That's not a spoiler, you know that from the beginning. And the relationships in this story feel real and very realistic. And the book deals with lots of different themes, such as addiction and trauma, and how people deal with grief. I've read a lot of books about grief and stuff this year, which is very jolly. But this, very much enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars and highly recommend. If you like stories about sisters, families, and family drama. The next one I read was The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. I read this on my Kindle. This is, I think, what you would expect from Riley Sager. It was fun. It's about a woman who is a well-known actress. She is a bit troubled. Her partner or husband dies. He drowns on a lake where they live, and she kind of has a mental breakdown after that. And then some new people move in across the lake from her, and she can like literally see into their house from where she lives across the lake. Their house is like all glass fronted, and she can see right into their house, and she watches them as they go about their lives. She sees something that she thinks is dodgy happen, and then the woman across the lake goes missing, and it all falls out from there. This was fun. It was fast-paced, you know, mystery. I kind of figured it out before the end, which is always a bit disappointing, especially for me, because I don't think I'm very good at figuring things out. I don't really try to think ahead or anything, but I did in this case figure out what was going on mostly. But still, it was a fun read, and yeah, fast-paced, what you would expect from Riley Sager. The next book I read was My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. I have read a few of her books and have pretty much loved them all. This one follows the story of a woman who goes off for a run. She comes back home, and the locks to her door, the locks to her house have been changed. she can't get into a house, and a woman comes to the door and says she's her, and then it follows the story from there. It's absolutely bonkers, this story. I enjoyed it a lot, but in the end it was just a little bit too much for me. I love twisty-turny stories, absolutely. But this one was it just went a little bit too far for me and just let it down at the end. It's still a really good book. I very much enjoyed it. I think I give it 3.5 stars or 4 stars. But it just, I think, just went a bit too far for me. But that won't stop me from reading her other books because I think she's great. Okay, after My Husband's Wife, I read A Guardian and a Thief by Megha Majumdar. This is shortlisted for one of, is it the Women's Prize? Or not maybe shortlisted, longlisted. It's nominated for, I think it's the Women's Prize for Fiction. So this follows the story of a woman in India. We kind of sometime in the future, India, if not the world, is going to pieces, climate problems. We follow the story of a woman, her daughter and her father as they are preparing to leave India and travel to America, where her husband has already gone. Just before they're about to go, their passports and essential papers and that are stolen, and then it all happens from there. I did very much enjoy this story, but I don't know why, I didn't love it, and I'm not sure why. It was really interesting. I very much like the climate aspect of it and the kind of dystopian, near dystopian aspect. For some reason, I just couldn't connect with the characters. I just didn't really feel for them, which was bizarre because, like, they're going through a really tough time, and you know, they're desperate to get out of the country and go to meet her husband. But for some reason, I don't know, I just felt a bit disconnected from the story. But that wouldn't put me off from reading another of her books. I think she's a great writer, and I have actually got another of hers. It's not up there. I'm not sure which one it is. Is it A Burning? Is that the only other one she's written? I think it must be A Burning. So I'm definitely going to read that as well. But this one just didn't quite hit the mark for me. And then the last book I've read in the first quarter of the year is Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. Again, this one just didn't quite do it for me. It was almost, but not quite, a 5-star read. So this follows the story of, starts off with like a young teenage girl and boy who fall in love. I think that's probably partly what I didn't like, the insta love. I hate that. They break up over a misunderstanding, which I find infuriating. Just speak to each other. Then she marries somebody else, she has a child, and then they meet up again in the future, and shenanigans ensue. There is a bit of a mystery element to this. There's a death, and again, maybe I'm just reading too many of these books because I figured this one out as well. I didn't find it particularly mysterious. Like, I thought it was quite obvious what actually happened. I did like the relationship between the woman and her husband, although I found that a bit infuriating as well. He was a bit of a limp lettuce. Yeah, and I had such high hopes for this. It's been really hyped, this book. Everybody, I haven't really heard anything bad about it. Natasha read it, she loved it. But it just didn't quite do it for me. I'm not a huge romance reader, so maybe that's partly why I didn't connect with it so well. The mystery aspect wasn't too taxing or mysterious to figure out. And yeah, just didn't quite do it for me. So Those are the 14 books I've read so far this year. It's been average, I would say, pretty mediocre at the moment. Haven't read a 5-star read yet. Desperate to read one. You know, it's April, so it's about time I read a 5-star. Since then, I've read 2 more books. I've read 2 books in April so far. Neither of them are 5 stars either, so fingers crossed that I will get to a 5-star read very soon. If you've read any of them, I would love to hear your comments. If you disagree with whatever my scathing reviews of these books have been, please let me know in the comments. Would love to hear what you loved about these books, or if you agree with me, then please let me know as well. Thank you for watching, and I will be back soon with a video about the books I'm hoping to read this spring. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.